Welcome to the Live Big podcast, where real estate expert Nick Paynes shows you that everyone can build wealth through real estate investing. Nick and his featured guests will give you the tools, resources, and expert information you need to leverage real estate into a wealth-building strategy, so you can stop worrying about your 9-to-5 and start to live big. Here's Nick with today's episode.
All right. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Live Big podcast. Today, we're going to talk about a little bit of a hot topic in the news. It's not quite an investor topic, but it's a big piece of news that's come across in the real estate industry. So it stems from a lawsuit. It's the Burnett versus National Association of Realtors, Keller Williams, and Home Services of America case. This, for those of you who haven't heard, on October 31st, a jury ruled in favor of the plaintiffs, which is this Burnett class action lawsuit. And they awarded damages of $1.8 billion. So I want to talk about this lawsuit today, why it's significant, and kind of the basis of it and how it's going to affect the real estate industry. So first, let's talk about the basis of the lawsuit. It's pretty simple. The idea behind this particular class action lawsuit is that they believe that real estate agents and firms were price fixing commissions, and they were essentially requiring the seller to pay a commission to the buyer's agent, right? And so it essentially just said that rates are too high, that commission rates are too high, buyers brokers or buyers agents are being paid too much, and that the National Association of Realtor rules and corporate defendants practices lead to set pricing. Okay, so that was a lawsuit. All right, so first, I want to kind of back up a little bit and talk about the history of the real estate agent, history of agency, the National Association of Realtors, and then we're going to come back to the actual lawsuit and talk about how that affects today's market. So first of all, let's talk about the history of the real estate agent. The real estate agent was formed a long time ago, over 100 years ago, over a century ago, because there was essentially a shortage of attorneys to do real estate transactions. So at the time, real estate transactions had to be consummated essentially by a real estate attorney. And as real estate transactions became more and more plentiful, there weren't enough real estate attorney lawyers or real estate attorneys to do all the transactions. So what they did was they basically created a bunch of set forms or contracts that could be executed by a real estate broker or a real estate agent who was essentially educated in real estate law only and at a very limited extent. Okay. So to a certain extent, you can almost think of a real estate agent or real estate broker as I want to state my words lightly here, but kind of as a lawyer for a real estate contract, but not nearly with the education and not nearly with the law background. So when a real estate agent goes through schooling to be a real estate agent, they do a lot of law, real estate law, ethics, things like that they go through. And ultimately what we do is we have the ability to fill out contracts on the behalf of the seller or the buyer, fill out these real estate, real estate contracts that are formed by an attorney that are essentially fill in the blank, right? And so that is what our license allows us to do, is to fill out disclosures, pre-written disclosures that come from a real estate attorney, and we have the essentially the power to fill those contracts out as they're pre-written. Okay, so the real estate agent gets created, helps in real estate transactions with pre-written, predetermined disclosures and contracts. Now, the National Association of Realtors was founded in 1908. And the reality is that a buyer's agent really didn't even exist until about the 1990s. So originally as a buyer, what you would do is if you wanted to buy a home is you would go from one real estate office to another and you would look at each office's listings, or you would drive around town and you would look for signs and call the number on the sign. Okay. So the problem is you would go to one office and they would have a couple of listings, and then you'd have to go drive to another office and they'd have a couple of listings. So what the National Association of Realtors did was in the 1960s, they put together the MLS, or the multiple listing service, okay, that helped them collect all the data from the local brokerages and put it into one place. Okay. So originally what happened was that got put into a book, and those books got delivered like on a monthly basis to each of the firms and had printouts of, everything that was listed. Okay. Now, obviously we have it all online. It's all easily accessible through syndicated websites like Zillow, Realtor.com, and then through your local MLSs. Okay. But this was a huge step in the right direction for buying and for the home buying process. And it was mutually beneficial for all parties, right? Because the buyer no longer had to drive around to all the different, offices, or drive around and just look for signs in the yard to find homes for sale. The seller got way more exposure by being basically syndicated at that point, or marketed to all the other brokerage firms. Okay. And then the agent had a much better possibility of selling that home in, less time for more money, et cetera. Right. So it was a mutually beneficial thing to create the multiple listing service where everybody had access to all the homes, not just what was in the particular, brokerage firm. So in addition to this, what ended up happening is brokerages ended up agreeing to share the commission that was paid by sellers. So this kind of allowed agents who were not representing the seller to sell the property, right? So they would come in, they would find the property, they would kind of find a buyer for it. But these agents at the time, they were known as sub-agents, and they were subcontracted by the listing brokerage firm to sell the home. So because they were contracted by the listing brokerage firm, the sub-agents legally represented the seller. And so their fiduciary duty was owed to the seller, even though they may not have ever met the seller and they were kind of working with the buyer. So what ended up happening was in 1983, the FTC did a study, and it revealed that 72% of buyers at the time mistakenly believed that the agent that was showing them the homes represented their best interest, not the best interest of the seller. So 3 out of 4 people thought that they were being represented, that whoever was bringing them the home was representing them, and that they had their best interests at heart, when the reality was they did not. They were representing the sellers. Okay. So in the 1990s, buyer agency was established, and now there was no longer confusion as to where fiduciary responsibility landed. So those sub-agents that used to get paid as a fiduciary of the seller are started to become now what we call a co-op agent, or in this case, a buyer's agent. Okay. And the sellers generally agreed to pay that same commission that they had already been paying to sell the home. Okay. That the broker would negotiate that commission. That commission generally was, somewhere between 5 and 7%. So then the broker, the agent, would negotiate that commission with the seller, and they would make that entire commission if they sold the home. Regardless of how they sold it, they would make that 5 to 7%. So if they hired out a sub-agent or a subcontractor to go find a buyer for that house, the seller still paid that same 5 to 7%. And then the listing agent would maybe give away a portion of their commission that they earned through that 5 to 7%. And they would hire out that contractor to go help find a buyer. So now we're essentially doing the same thing, which is that we're charging a rate to sell the home, okay, a percentage to sell the home. And then we are agreeing as listing agents to pay a co-op broker or a buyer's agent to go and help us find a buyer for that home. So historically, what has happened is there's been kind of a standardized commission rate, and in every market, it's a little bit different. So you go to a market, people may say, hey, what's the average commission rate, or what's the standard commission rate here? Might be 5%, might be 6%, might be 7%. Okay. And that's the total price of the home. That percentage is a percentage of commission rate that is paid to the listing broker. And then that listing broker has the ability to pay a co-op agent out of that portion of the proceeds to help sell the home. Okay. Now, for the better part of 3-4 decades, okay, the practice has generally been to basically split that commission between the two agents involved in the transaction. Now, I can't speak for states outside of Colorado, but in a Colorado listing agreement, we have a very specific section that says the commission rate is 6% or 5% or 7%. Okay. And then we have a line below that that says that in the event that another agent, a co-op agent or a buyer's agent brings the buyer for this home, the brokerage will pay a portion of that 6%, and we establish what it is. So it might be 3%. We might pay half of it, okay, or 3% to a co-op agent. The 6% doesn't change, okay? So whether I sell the home or whether a buyer's agent comes and sells the home, the seller is going to pay 6%. So historically speaking, that's kind of the way things have worked, okay? Now, like I said, this class action lawsuit, okay, argues that these commission rates, A, are too high, okay, B, that buyers brokers are being paid too much, okay? And that C, the National Association of Realtors has rules and code of ethics, and so do the corporate defendants, okay? In this case, Keller Williams and I can't remember who else, Home Services of America. There were a couple other ones that were in there that settled before they got to this case or got this far. Okay. They're basically saying that those corporate defendants and National Association of Realtors, that those practices lead to set pricing. All right. So that's the overview. That's the history of the real estate broker and how commissions came about. Here's my take on the lawsuit. The lawsuit in itself, and again, I don't have the big picture of what every market looks like. And the majority of this lawsuit stemmed from Missouri. Okay, so I don't know what the practices are in Missouri. I don't know what the listing agreement looked like in Missouri, but the listing agreement here in Colorado very specifically has a blank space for the amount of commission that's being charged to the seller and has another blank space for the amount of commission that will be paid to a buyer's agent in the event that is another co-op agent brings the buyer to sell the home. Okay, when we go through that listing agreement with one of our clients, we specifically go through that. This is what we charge, and this is what we would pay a co-op agent in the event that they bring one. Okay. The seller would either agree or disagree with that. If they agree, they sign the agreement. We list it, we market it as that, and we market that we will pay the buyer's agent or a co-op agent X amount of dollars so that they'll bring a buyer. Okay. What that does is marketing the pay that we're giving to a co-op broker encourages them to bring a buyer to help sell the property, right? So the seller can either pay me 6% to sell the property and say, I will not pay another agent to do it. I'm just paying you 6%, okay? And I can go through my resources to try to find a buyer for that property. Or I can leverage and go to the other 30,000 real estate agents that are in the Denver metro area in Colorado and find out if they happen to know any buyers that might be interested in my listing. Now, the reality is that we have a fiduciary responsibility to our sellers. And one of the things that we like to do, and from a marketing standpoint, is we tell our sellers that our goal is to sell your home in the least amount of time for the most amount of money with the least amount of inconvenience. And the way that we do that is by attracting the most amount of buyers that we possibly can. And the fact is that we can't possibly create the reach through our own marketing and through our own database of buyers that we can through a multiple listing service marketing to the other 30,000 agents in the market, who will then market the property to each one of their buyers. So if each one of those 30,000 agents, okay, has 4 or 5 buyers that they might be working with, we're looking at hundreds of thousands of potential buyers for that property. We as listing agents cannot possibly have that type of reach without co-op agency. So my take on the lawsuit is that I think it's frivolous. The reality is that real estate commissions, they say real estate commissions are too high. That's completely subjective, okay? And they're negotiable. So the reality is that they're negotiable. Just like going in and buying a car, they may or may not be negotiable. And you're going to go to some places where you can negotiate the price of your car. But you can also go into a bunch of dealerships that are not negotiable. They come in and they say, we don't haggle, we don't negotiate our prices. And you will find real estate agents that do that as well. I'm one of those real estate agents. I don't negotiate my commission. I negotiate my value, right? So the reality is this is the type of value that I bring to you, and this is what it's worth. Okay. So if you'd like to have a high value agent that brings all these different things and brings all these different skills to selling your home, this is what it's going to cost you, right? So first of all, we don't price set. We set our own prices. If you walk into a Mercedes dealership and try to offer 30 grand for a $60,000 car, they're going to tell you, unfortunately, we don't sell these cars for 30,000. You can go down the street to Hyundai. They have $30,000 cars, but we don't. And what are you going to exchange for that? You're going to exchange service. You're going to exchange quality, and you're going to exchange price. And it's completely up to you as the consumer to determine which one of those things you're willing to sacrifice, right? You can go down the street to Hyundai. What are you going to sacrifice if you do that? You're going to get price. You're going to get a great price. But what are you going to sacrifice? You might sacrifice service. You might sacrifice quality of product. So when it comes to the lawsuit, I think it's frivolous because the reality is the commissions have always been negotiable, but some people just aren't willing to negotiate. I'm one of those people. If you don't want to pay what my fee is, no problem. There's other agents out there that will help you, that will sell your home for less. Go work with them. You have that ability as a consumer. The second piece is you sign an agreement that we put together. You knew exactly what was being paid to me as a listing broker and what I would be paying a co-op. That was disclosed. So again, I don't know what Missouri's contract looks like, but from our standpoint here in Colorado, it's frivolous. Okay. So here's what I think is going to happen in the market, because this is kind of big news and there's people all over social media blowing up about how this is going to kill real estate agents as we know it. Buyers agents are going to no longer be existent. I don't think that that's going to happen. I think what's going to happen is there's going to be a little bit more caution with real estate agents. I already find myself doing it when I present, to be very clear in that the seller has the ability to determine how much I pay the buyer's agent. Okay, so if I say that I have a 6% commission rate, and they say, okay, well, I only want to pay the buyer's agent 1%. I'm still going to charge 6%. So while I appreciate them wanting to pay me 5% to sell the home, I'm going to let them know, because it's my fiduciary responsibility to them to sell their house for the most amount of money in the least amount of time with the least amount of inconvenience. It's my responsibility to let them know that the reality is that I'm going to be able to do those duties and fulfill those duties better if I pay a better rate to a buyer's agent. Okay. In our market, industry standards, 2.5% to 3%. And I can tell you whether it's right or not, there are agents out there that if a listing is not paying what they think should be the going rate for a co-op agent, they won't show the home. Now, that's against our code of ethics as realtors. Okay. It's against your fiduciary responsibility if you're representing a buyer. But the reality is people will do it. They sweep that listing under the mat and they try not to show it because they know they're not going to get paid on it. Okay. The second thing that they do is they will show it, but they let their buyers know very clearly that in the event that you like this home and you want to put an offer on this property, just know that my success rate that you agreed to me as a buyer's agent is 3%. And this home is only paying 2%. So we'll need to figure out one of two things. Either A, you can pay me the difference, okay, the extra 1% as your buyer's agent, or B, you can allow me to request it when we make our offer that the seller pay the 3%. The fact is that in our current market with high prices, low inventory, and high interest rates, affordability is already at the lowest that it's been in like over 20 years. Home affordability is really tough right now. Okay. I think something like only 67% or 70% of families can afford like a home to be in, right? That affordability was over 100% last year. Everybody could afford a home. Okay, it's changed a lot. The current market is different. And so what's happening is these people, these buyers especially, are already having a hard enough time getting into their homes. So you ask them to pay a buyer's agent on top of that, and what will happen is they're just going to get out of the market, or they're going to try to do the transaction themselves. And one thing that we notice is when people do transactions themselves, first of all, it doesn't save the seller a whole lot of money because they've already agreed to pay the listing agent a certain amount of a certain fee. Okay. Second is more deals fall apart. More deals fall apart when agents or when clients come in unrepresented, because there's not a third party in there that is used to the transaction, understanding of real estate transactions, that can talk each party off the ledge when a bad inspection comes back, right? That we say, look, I know that you think this inspection is bad, but the reality is this is what most inspections look like. So take a deep breath, realize that it's not that bad, and let's try to get through this. Okay. We help take the emotion out of the transaction. So you're going to have more failed deals if people start trying to represent themselves. Okay. You're not going to have a whole lot of difference on the sell side anyway. So maybe the sellers start to negotiate lower commissions for listings. Maybe. But I'm telling you, when I go in and I talk to a person about the commission that they're paying, okay, and I say, hey, while I appreciate you wanted me to pay 5%, I recommend that you allow me to offer 3% or 2.8% to the buyer's agent, because that will be in your best interest to help drive as much traffic as possible. Over 90% of buyers use a buyer's agent. So, and they want to get paid. Buyer's agents want to get paid for the work they do, and their buyers want them to get paid. And the reason it started so long ago was because buyer's agents helped sell the home, and sellers were happy to pay that commission regardless of who it went to in order to get that home sold quickly, easily, and for as much money as possible. So I don't see a whole lot changing in the industry with this particular change. I think what has to happen is agents have to be better. Agents have to be better at their jobs, and they have to provide more value. If you're a buyer's agent and you're scared that you're not going to get paid by the seller, you need to create enough value in your business that your buyers are willing to pay you, or your buyers are willing to say, hey, I don't even want to look at a home if you're not getting paid for it by the seller. And what will happen is those sellers that refuse to pay co-op agents, they're going to start seeing their prices drop back. Okay? Because the only way that these buyers can afford a lot of times to get into a home and have a buyer's agent represent them is that it's part of the purchase price and it's financed. They basically can finance the payment to their agent. If we remove that and ask them to pay for it out of pocket, there goes their down payment and their closing costs that they had saved up in order to purchase the home, right? So the ability to finance the payment to their agent is extremely valuable. And if you eliminate that, it's just going to drive the price down of your home, and you're going to end up selling it for less than you would have had you paid a co-op agent. So that's my opinion. That's my opinion on the market. That's my opinion on what will happen to agents in general. But agents need to be more firm and understanding, and they need to perfect their craft. They need to be better. We have too many agents that aren't good at their jobs, and they don't deserve the commission rates that they make. They need to be better. So that is my take on what this lawsuit is going to do. It's big news right now, at least in the real estate industry. You may have seen it on your local news because it is a big lawsuit. Now, I will say that the National Association of Realtors has vowed to continue to appeal this decision, this $1.8 billion decision. And so this will be tied up in court for years to come, for sure. So it will continue to be tied up. We're not going to have any resolution on this anytime soon. But I think what it will do is start to change the way that agents talk to their clients and make sure that people have a better understanding of what agency actually looks like. So I hope this was a good kind of recap or understanding of what's going on. Maybe you're a real estate agent wondering what is going to happen in the market, or even a client wondering how it's going to affect the purchase or the sale of homes. Honestly, I don't think it's going to have a huge effect. I think it's just going to create more transparency in the way that people operate their business. So that's it for today. Hope it was informational. We're getting into our colder days and time to start finding some deals on the real estate market. So get with your local investment agent, find some deals this winter, take advantage while prices are down, refinance next year in 2025 when rates get better so that you can build the life that you're looking for and live big. See you next week.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Live Big podcast. For even more real estate and investment resources, go to blackyetigroup.com/resources and download Nick's complete guide to running your own rental properties. Tune back in next week for another episode, and until then, live big.
Live Big does not provide investment, legal, or tax advice, and nothing herein should be construed as being financial, legal, tax, or other advice. Live Big does not represent that any securities or services discussed are suitable for any investor. No investment or other decision should be made solely based on the contents or information found on the website or podcast. When making a decision about your investments, you should seek the advice of a professional financial advisor or qualified expert.